The 2014 budget is Babtunde Ogunsowo. He's a Data and Information Analyst. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Well, before this, I really would want to get your take on the series of letters we've actually seen before we came to this, because, the week has been, agog with letters and letters, but specifically the letter written by President Olusegun Obasanjo to incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan. As a Data and Information Analyst, how would you want to relate this particular letter to perhaps maybe other letters written by some world leaders?
Well, thank you. It's actually been, as you said, it's been a long week of letters. Apparently, most discussions that have been ongoing, especially in the media, on the letter, on President Obasanjo's letter, has been on the messenger and on the message. There's a critical third leg, which is the mess. So we have, in reality, the messenger, the message, and the mess that we find ourselves in. Unfortunately, Obasanjo's letter was a personal letter addressed to Jonathan. Most stakeholders have analyzed that letter as if it were a leadership letter. Looking at the beginning of Obasanjo's letter, specifically, Obasanjo had said, "I am constrained to make this an open letter." He went on to say that, one, the current situation and the consequence possible situation makes or dictates that I. So in the first two sentences, Obasanjo had used the word I. Apart from the letter being an 18-page letter, we could compare other significant things in the letter. For example, within the same letter, Obasanjo had used the word terrorism. He had used that word 3 times. He had used the word integrity 3 times. He went on further to use more words like Boko Haram that he used 6 times. But if you look at it carefully, he had used the word president 40 times. He had used the word party 38 times. And he had used the word PDP 31 times. Compared to other words like democracy that he used 10 times, you could clearly see from the beginning, based on the textual analysis, the letter was about him, the party, and the president, which is more of a personal letter as opposed to how most analysts have viewed it as a leadership letter. Other words and other ways that might be interesting for us to look at it is the words I, for example. Obasanjo on 152 times specifically had referred to himself using the word I. He had referred to President Jonathan using the words you. He had used that word 148 times. And then he had used the word they even more than he used the word we. So clearly, if you look at the trend, from the introduction he had used the word I. A lot of points, a lot of places in the letter, he had used the word I, you, and they, pointing to potential and people that he felt were opposed to the development in the country. And then he had focused most of his words on the party and on the president. If you compare that letter to, say, a letter Mahatma Gandhi wrote on the 23rd of July, 1939 to Hitler. The purpose of the letter was to influence Hitler to avoid starting World War II. Gandhi had started that letter by saying, "Dear friend, my friends," he depersonalized the letter. He said, "My friends have been persuading me to write to you in the sake of humanity." Clearly, what Gandhi had done was he had depersonalized the letter, referred to his friends, and he had also talked about the goal of the letter, which was humanity. We could also look at the longest letter Martin Luther King Jr. wrote. It was an 11-page letter, and specifically, Martin Luther King had called that letter a book, even though it was just 11 pages. He wrote that letter while he was in Birmingham prison, trying to fight for his cause of segregation and against racism. In that letter as well, he had started that letter by de-emphasizing himself, and he had referred to the clergymen that he was writing those letters to. Comparing keywords in both letters, you'll have seen that, for example, in Obasanjo's letter that he had used the word day. All through Martin Luther King's letter, he never used the word day once. So there's nothing wrong with Obasanjo writing a personal letter to Jonathan, but it is important for us as stakeholders not to analyze a personal letter as if it were a leadership letter. Leadership letters will focus more on the economy. For example, in Martin Luther King's letter, the most words he used were law. He used the words segregation, and he talked more about the people, never referring or never using the word they. In Obasanjo's letter, he used the word they more times than he used the words we. Those are the key points we need to, as observers and as
stakeholders. So all of these point to the fact that it is more of a personalized or egoistic kind of writing towards to the president. Is that what you're driving at?
More of a personal letter. I probably wouldn't use the word egoistic, but more of a personal letter sharing his concerns, his personal concerns regarding PDP, the party, Jonathan, and himself. That's the first premise of the letter. Even though he talked about so many other issues, a textual analysis of the letter lets you see that the other issues were secondary to his primary premise. So
if you look at it side by side with the Sanusi letter, do you see any similarities, or is there something different as well?
On the first examination of Sanusi's letter, there are two major similarities. The same words Obasanjo used to start his letter, by using the words, I am constrained to, were the same words the central bank governor used to start his letter, verbatim, I am constrained to. They also used the same words at the closure of the letter. Some other similarities about those letters were both letters generated some sort of controversy in the country. Both letters relative to international standard lengths of letters were also both long letters. And both letters have also been perceived as leadership letters. Another interesting thing that some observers have pointed out was in Obasanjo's letter, which was claimed to have been leaked first, Obasanjo had referred to Sanusi's letter. Some observers believe that because Obasanjo had referred to Sanusi's letter, even though Sanusi's letter was not yet in the public, it had stimulated or it had influenced some parties to quickly release Sanusi's letter. In one way, it could also be interpreted sublimely to state that Obasanjo was also, or President Obasanjo was also subtly telling President Jonathan that he has access to information that the President Jonathan has.
Also had. Well, anyway, I think so much on those letters because another document which some would want to call maybe a financial letter is the budget 2014 finally presented, and we can actually see that 4.6 trillion naira has been budgeted for that fiscal year, and a whole lot of highlights. Look at the benchmark of oil at $77.5 dollars per barrel.
It's interesting. The discussion has been ongoing, and we seem to be at a point where we started at 74, and we moved to 76, then we moved to 79.5, and we found some ground on 77.5. But what puzzles me more is, as a nation, we've consistently talked about diversifying the economy. So ordinarily, you would expect when the House has issues with the budget, the focus will be on the non-oil benchmark rather than focus so much on the oil benchmark. One would expect, reasonably, that in the process of diversifying the economy, we would scrutinize more of our non-oil revenue, especially our budget on corporate income tax, our budget on custom and excise duties, our budget on value-added tax, and other non-income sources. But what you find is a peculiar case where, on one side, we are saying we want to diversify the economy. On the other side, the House is focusing so much on what is in the oil purse and what is in the oil wallet. I give you a typical example of what is in this year's budget. We could look at it as, which I want us to look at it as, the number side and the implication side. On the numbers, it works quite simply. The federal government from oil sales expects to earn 6 trillion naira. Net of all expenses, we're looking at about 4 trillion naira. From oil revenue. From non-oil revenue, we're looking at a revenue of about 3.3 trillion naira. Again, net of all collection, cost, and all that, we come to a non-oil revenue of about 1.8 trillion naira. Put together, the federal government is looking at about 6.8 trillion naira as revenue. But clearly, we understand that there's revenue allocation to the states and to the local governments. So in simple form, how it works is, though the federal government has budgeted 4.6 trillion naira, the sum of about 2 trillion naira goes to the states, which makes it about 6.6 trillion. We then have a sum of about 1.5 trillion that goes to the local governments.